art, for me, has been translated arms for AR, actually arms for A, and then R for reaching, and then T was always something that everybody saw as Christ and or God. And so art is just simply reaching to that upper, higher entity, art. That's what art is to me. My background is one of a tortilla manufacturing company that my father owned, and from that I just grew up around horses, riding them, and also watching my father paint and do crafts around the house. So that was kind of my first introductory into arts and crafts, was through my dad, watching him.
And you're from Fresno?
I am from Fresno originally, and then moved just to the outskirts, called an area called Clovis. Went to Clovis schools. Clovis, of course, during the time as I was growing up, was known as a cowboy town, because we do rodeos over here in Clovis. We also do big hat days, and so Clovis is quite a westernized type of town. Now it has changed over those years, but originally it was a very western style home. I went to Fresno State, I went to City College, went to South Lake Community College, went to Fresno Adult Schools, Clovis Adults, and everywhere I could take some form of art and opportunity, I would take a class and learn something. I took photography. Yeah, I took everything that dealt with the area of pictures. And so I learned all kinds of different aspects and different perspectives with the different teachers that I would take. And kind of eventually some worked for me and some didn't. And then from that I just kind of made my own mix, choosing what worked for me. And I always felt good about what I was doing. Monet was an influence. Leonardo da Vinci was probably my biggest influence at the beginning. Well, what I picked up from Italy and the art from Italy was the free form. Everything looked very relaxed, even in their military type of pictures. It was very free flowing. There was a soft form to it, and so that's kind of what I picked up from the Italian paintings of that time. It was the form more. Artistic expression is the ability to express what it is inside that you're feeling about a particular subject. What it feels to the artist to be able to show people what cannot be seen in a sometimes physical way. For example, there's subtle anger, there's subtle fear, there's subtle joys that we don't always smile and laugh at. There's subtleties that I can feel, that I can express. Calmness, serenity, peace. These are things that people don't always see, and yet I can express them. This is how I see or feel when I express it in my picture. This is what is me, and this is how I interpret these feelings. So yes, emotions, feelings are key for me in expressing in my art, because that's the first thing that I seek, is what is it the feeling of this particular image. When I see an image, what is it that makes me feel about it? What is it that makes me have this emotion towards it? And it might not be clear to me about what that emotion is. But as I go through the process of creating the visual, then it gets stronger, it gets clearer. Okay, now this is where it's coming from. Okay, I'm getting more reds and more slash marks. Okay, this could be a little more angrier. Okay, it's an interpretation of what you're feeling at the time as an artist. Abstract, from what I sense, is it's about the energy that the person is feeling and interpreting in not necessarily seeing, but as, like I said, as it develops. Abstract represents what is inside the human spirit, the mind, and it's being expressed in a way that we don't normally see. It's energy. And therefore, it's not always understood. And realism is what's already physically here. We can see that. We can see me. We can see the table. But when it comes to the emotional and energetic level, then it goes into what we call colors, lines, space, all those things that we know as in science is energy. I make it personal. I make it personal and I make it relevant to me. Now, whether or not the other person finds it interesting is totally individual. We cannot make everybody find something interesting for everything we do. So therefore, the only person that is important in creating the art is that I find it of interest. In developing my technique, one of the things that I learned, of course, in your basic art classes was that there's elements of space, line, form, and color, and if you're doing a do color. And so this particular first and only black and white I ever did was to study space and what it does with form. So as you can see in this particular piece, what I learned was that in space, as you get really close, you can see that there's white spaces, subtle white spaces. And here's the white canvas, of course, the white poster paper. And as I kept filling in spaces and really focused in space and just kept filling in spaces and filling the space, it started to develop itself in shadows and depth. And so in short, much like the universe, when space is filled, it develops a form as space is filled. And so as I started learning to fill in space, form was developing. Well, I have been a meditator for close to 10 years. And so now I've learned through quieting my mind that things just come so much easier, and the solutions come easier, and ideas come in easier. And so it just becomes so much easier to quiet myself, find that space of serenity, and just allow what I want in the moment to come up. And whatever comes up, comes up. And in short, I meditate in order to find ideas, find solutions. Well, I was struggling as an artist to connect with the local community and some of the people surrounding the valley. And so when I quieted myself and just started allowing solutions to come, one of the things that I discovered in my time of quietness was that previously I tried to change the culture around the valley. And like many of us, trying to make the valley into more of an artistic or entertainment industry, and finally came to peace in terms that the valley is an agricultural industry. And so a lot of people's focus and attentions are on the agriculture. And so how to connect to the people through art was to simply focus on what they like, and I like, and I've been surrounded by. And here in the valley, grapes is the big thing in the valley. We do raisins, and up in Sonoma and that area is wines, and Napa's wines is all surrounding grapes. So I thought, well, why don't I go with it and start creating a picture with grapes and see how that attracts the viewer, and if it makes a connection with the valley. So pointing out things that's already here. Every piece I normally do, not every piece, but normally I have a circle form. And circle forms have always represented in the spirituality as wholeness. It's complete. And so any circle and anywhere has always a feeling of completion. There's something complete about this. It could be as subtle as making one of these little loops here a circle. It doesn't have to be so obvious. But I particularly chose to put a world there. And if you notice, this is not our world, it is a world. And so in this particular case, grapes, this particular picture has, as you can see, red running through the leaves, and that kind of represented the bloodline of the valley, which is grapes and agriculture. The world, it's our world here in the agriculture. It's the world that we've created. So this is a world that only the valley knows. Not every place knows grapes. And as you can see, the bloodline goes through the leaves. And this particular swirl is just that it's a continuation. In art, we try to make things look like they're continuing. On the bottom, there's some mountains areas which are going to be developed. This is, like I said, this is a picture in progress and process. And the mountains kind of surround the valley. And as you can see in this little particular, there's another circle. Normally when I start, I always pencil things in, because the pencil allows me to make my changes, my adjustments. So once I do it in pencil, then, and I like the form, because it's about the form now, then I put it in ink. I outline it in ink, and then I erase the other pencil. And now I've created a form that's pleasing to me, just the form. And that's the beginning of my particular starting of a piece. Will always just be outline it. And then from that point, I choose what I want light and what I want dark. And then from that point, when I choose what I want light and what I want dark, then I choose color. What colors do I want? And I always know that if I choose a particular, in this particular case, a reddish orange, then I know by the color theory that it's going to have some green and blue in somewhere to give it its balance in color theory, and it's called, you know, the complementary color of whatever I'm choosing. Sometimes I feel things might be done, but deep inside me I'm going, it still needs something. But like everybody, maybe I can pass it by and not have to work on it no more, because maybe I'm a little tired of it. And so I'll get another opinion, which is usually somebody here, and they'll tell me, no, it's about 90% done. And I kind of knew that. So then I go, okay. I go back to finishing it off. And then finally, when I say to myself inside, yes, it's really done, then what everybody else has to say about it, whether it's done or not, to me, it's done. It's always based on a feeling. Well, as one of my particular favorite time of eras was the Renaissance. And as you know, in the Renaissance, there was pictures like Mona Lisa and all these world-famous Italian. And their particular way of style was always darkening the edges of the picture, and then bringing the focus to whatever they wanted, which would be a face, or it could be a horse, or whatever. But it would always bring it into the picture. So edges were never looked at as the primary focus. It was important. In fact, it was so important that the edges were darkened that they spent a lot of time on the edges, so that it was easier for the eye to take a look at what is it the artist wants me to see, because outside of that, our eyes will wander wherever the light is, which in turn brings me to the subject of light. Light in color theory is where our eye goes to. So much like the moths on the light bulb, you turn your outside light on and then there's the light, you'll see the moths go straight to the light. So it's the same with our eyes. Wherever light is, our eyes go to. So in this particular case, I choose where I want my light is. Where do I want my viewer to see? So therefore, by darkening and edges and everything, I bring everything to the area or center or off center of what I want them to see. And that's kind of what I've looked at in the Renaissance period. That's how they were so successful in capturing your eyes to see what they wanted you to see. Well, one of the things I want to mention also is that I have found working on a glass table to be more... The glass table allows me to focus on the color than what the color on the table is. The table could be reddish brown. It could be a white. It could be a lot of things, but the glass table takes no color. So I found for myself that working on a glass table, now all my attention goes to the piece of the color. And so then what I look at now is just simply the piece, rather than the wood grains and everything else that influences the picture. And if you ever happen to take a real close-up look of this piece, you'll see where I start working on space. For example, this particular area right here is a space that I want to fill in. And so as I take something that might be a complement, for example, this color here, you might see it as maybe a reddish orange. And the complement of of orange is going to be blue. So what I will do is muddy it with the blue, with the orange. And I start filling in this space. As you can see, it starts closing the space. And so what you saw in a few minutes ago starts fading away. Now, I know there's a philosophy and also in my color theory, which is in everything is everything. So in red, like a TV, has the pixels. If you ever looked at a red dress, or if you ever looked at a green leaf that's on a TV, and the TV salesman will look up to you and show you the pixels, what you will see in that red dress is every color. There has to be purple, blue, yellow, orange, but it's the percentage of the red pixels that really brings out everything. It's the blues and the greens that give it the shadow because it's muting it. It's the complement of it. But every color and every color is every color. You can see that also in a prism. Light. I studied color theory, which was more on the science of color, because it's about the study of light. And if you ever took a look at a prism, there's the rainbow that comes out, which tells you that in light, there's every color. And so the same thing goes from the art that I do. In every picture, in every space, has to be every color. So therefore, you will see in this particular piece right here, where it looks a little greenish on the corner, there's going to have to be some form of reddish pink or whatever color. And even if it comes over here, again, in everything is everything, and every color is every color. And it has to go all the way to the edges. The edges are probably the most important thing in the particular style that I do, because it has to continue on. It also helps blacken the edges, which brings the focus into the picture. And I never use black. That's a tone in color theory. Black is created by every color in color theory. So that is basically what I start doing, is start layering ink all over. And I also get different perspectives on it by rotating the picture. Because as art, one of the things in your basic art classes is that changing up the picture and turning it around gives the artist a different perspective on the piece. And then we start looking at form and line rather than the actual image. We start developing by rotating it and not seeing the image as a picture, but as a form, what we need to do as an artist to enhance that form. There's really no obstacle to anything. If an artist sees that there's obstacles, then he will see obstacles rather than solutions. He will see the problems. But the solution is always right there in front of us. As a meditator, you just need to quiet yourself enough to let the solution come. And many times it's simply being the ability to reach out, talk to people, connect, network, the ability to be friendly and approachable, the ability to change the way you see things, which is normally stop looking at a problem and start looking and seeking for the solution. And it's always there, so that it's all personal. It's not one blanket. There's many successful artists here. So we can't say that every artist is struggling within the Valley. No, because there are quite a few successful artists that are selling quite a bit of art at a what I call respectable price. So the only ones that are struggling are those that are still focused on their problem or the lack of not having something in their life, because it's all here. It's all available. So I do have a Facebook. It's called Kirk's Creative Art, and I'm in the development of that. I'm in the development stage of creating a website. These are all things that, as a new artist, I'm learning that are important to be able to get out my art. And I have a few people that are followers, and they give me their email, and I include them, and I just send out notices of what I'm doing, my newest pieces, and I enjoy meeting a lot of people every time I do a demo, because every time it hasn't been a moment yet when I tell people the medium or the media that I use, and I say I use everything with a Sharpie ink pen. It's always a double take, because they thought it was a poster or they thought it was a painting, and they come back and then they look super close to the picture because they're looking for lines. They're looking for some evidence that, oh yeah, and I see, it's a Sharpie pen. And they get this close to the picture looking for those Sharpie pen marks that you may normally see in an ink pen work. So yeah, you can find me on Kirk's Creative Art on Facebook currently, and hopefully then I'll soon have a website.